Okay, this is a response to the response from user pbry regarding sexual terror. Now, pbry seems to have a problem with my username, freedom of speech. He thinks that that's a little strange for an atheist. I have to ask you, why would that be? I can't think of any reason an atheist would be more for or against freedom of speech than, say, a theist. Actually, I can think of several reasons why a theist would be much more against freedom of speech. pbry goes on to try and explain that calling circumcision mutilation makes an atheist an oxymoron. Something to do with many atheists having piercings and tattoos and such things. I personally don't have any of them. I don't care if somebody else gets them. In fact, I don't even care if an adult gets circumcised. Those are all forms of mutilation. Mutilation, not necessarily a bad thing. If the individual wants to be mutilated, that's fine. That's their business. But inflicting forced mutilation on a child is a whole nother ballgame. For example, you wouldn't pierce your infant's nose or give the infant a tattoo on his shoulder. Why would you cut off the most sensitive and pleasurable part of his genitals? And then pbry also tries to explain that this is an oxymoron because of masturbation. Masturbation is a form of self-pleasure. It is not a form of mutilation. I have no idea how pbry is equating these in any way. Next, after a little more ranting about tattoos and piercings, pbry goes on to try and explain why circumcision is not mutilation by going into a dictionary and looking up the definition. Now, I don't know what dictionary he was looking at, but actually his definition perfectly described mutilation in a context that fits perfectly with circumcision. But I'm going to go ahead and grab my dictionary here. Now, the first definition of mutilate says to injure, disfigure, or to make imperfect by removing or irreparably damaging parts. Well, that fits pretty darn well. Okay, second definition, to deprive a person or animal of a limb or other essential part. Well, that's exactly what infant circumcision is. You are depriving an individual of a part of their body. pbry then goes on to read one of my replies where I cited a medical source. He reads the first sentence and then stops, completely missing the whole point of the quote. The most important part was, this was because the circumcised males required a long period of abstinence after their circumcision. If you've just been circumcised, you're not going to run home and have sex. In fact, you're not going to have sex for a long time. In fact, I believe it's estimated somewhere from 3 to 6 weeks you will not be having sex after a circumcision. Now, I would assume even quite some time after that, you're not going to be having very much sex, and it's not going to be very rough. It's going to be very gentle because you're going to be pretty darn sore down there. Now, that is going to dramatically skew the results of the study if the newly circumcised men are not having very much sex, and the still intact men are having just as much sex as they ever did. Now, that's only one problem with the study, but that is a huge problem. Huge problem. Now, in addition to that, looking at the reports, they show that they gave safe sex advice and condoms to the newly circumcised men. But there is nothing in these reports that shows that they did the same for the intact men. There's a big problem here. Now, it is possible that there could be some truth to these studies. The problem is that these studies were not conducted properly, and they were conducted in ways that are very, very suspicious. Now, in the future, if we do find out with certainty that circumcised men are less likely to contract HIV than an intact natural male, this does not mean that it's okay to have your infant circumcised. The male foreskin has the tightest concentration of pleasure-receptive nerves. By removing this part of the body without the individual's consent, you are amputating a part of the body which can give the most sexual pleasure, and they can never get those nerves back. Now, pbry also made another claim about atheists. He claims that all that they do is lie and exaggerate. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from someone who is a hardcore Kent Hovind fan. Yes, pbry is a hardcore Kent Hovind fan. Now, you can find this on one of his other videos. Something about the Free Kent Hovind Foundation or something like that. Okay, PBRY then goes back onto the circumcision thing. This is where he starts talking about advantages of circumcision. He goes on to claim that it's easier to keep the area clean because if there's no skin there, there's no skin to pull back in order to clean or wash there. Now, this is very interesting logic because this is exactly the same logic that the Muslims use for female circumcision. They say it's recommended because it's easier to keep the vagina clean by removing the clitoris and removing the clitoral hood and removing the labia and removing all these flaps of skin. So in essence, even to use this argument is ironic unless you also support female circumcision. After all, the female vagina contains many more folds of skin than an intact penis. He then mentions that a circumcised male is less likely to get urinary tract infections. Now, this is only true in the first few months of life. However, a female infant is still much more likely to get a urinary tract infection than an intact male. So, does that mean that we should circumcise all infant females as well? Okay, now he says he's got a good one. He looks at the camera and smiles and says that circumcision helps prevent cancer. This is a big one, right? Well, an intact male is actually more likely of getting breast cancer than penile cancer. Maybe when a newborn comes into the world, they should go directly to the surgery table and all have mastectomies. No, of course not. Then he goes on to claim that the Bible does not support mutilation. Oh boy, this is going to require a whole nother video if we go down that road, maybe a whole series of videos. Now, if that's a discussion you'd like to have, maybe someone else here can help you out with that because I only have so much time in the day. Maybe we could talk about nailing a slave's ear to the door. That's promoted in the Bible. Then he says something about how masturbation can lead to an addiction for masturbation. Well, that's interesting, being that if there is an addiction of any kind, that's got to be probably the best one that you could possibly have. I mean, masturbation is the safest form of sex there is. You're not going to get any STDs, you're not going to get anyone pregnant. You know, you're having fun and you're having sex with someone you love. Then he says that I just want to make God look bad. Well, that's interesting, being that I don't believe in God. Maybe it's more about the Bible looking bad. But I don't really need to make the Bible look bad. It pretty much does that on its own. Then he goes on to say that all atheists do is lie, twist scripture, or exaggerate. Well, lie. Lie about what? I see nothing to lie about. Twist scripture. Well, I'm definitely not twisting scripture. I've never twisted scripture. I pretty much read it exactly as it is. I think the church does a pretty good job of twisting scripture. And exaggerate. Well, there's definitely no need to exaggerate. It's completely unneeded. It's pretty nutty as it is. Now, this talk about the movie Zeitgeist, I don't understand what the point is of even bringing that up. That movie is about conspiracy theories, and the guy who made it, I think his name is Peter Joseph, even admits to not being an atheist. Zeitgeist is hardly a movie that represents atheism. Then he says that atheists have more faith than believers because they believe in the Big Bang. Well, there's a few problems here. First of all, an atheist does not have to believe in a Big Bang. An atheist does not have to believe in evolution. An atheist doesn't have to believe in anything. All atheism is atheism without theism. Now, I personally think that the Big Bang is very likely, but I don't have a belief in the Big Bang. I don't have faith in the Big Bang. We do have massive amounts of evidence that an expansion did occur. Now, the term Big Bang is actually a misnomer because nothing banged. Now, there are theories about where this expansion came from. You know, was it a singularity? And all these different questions. But we do have evidence, I repeat, evidence of an expansion. And that is the theory of the Big Bang. It is an expansion of space-time, and we do have that evidence.